Hi, I am live. I feel like I'm a little loungy right now. I'm kind of leaning back so you can see my cords that I try to usually hide a little bit. My heater is down here. It is a very cold day, and it's tough on us in Texas. So I just have my little heater out in my office, blowing on my feet right now. So sorry if you can hear that, but I am excited to hang out with y'all today for about an hour. So if you would like to ask questions for future lives, you can go to askdanakWhite.com. I know I saw briefly some of the comments before we got started, and somebody was asking if I'd gotten their email with questions. Probably, and but it is always not best. It is always best to fill out the form at askdanakWhite.com because that's just what I use. That's what I use for these lives, as opposed to trying to go and gather up questions. It just keeps it organized for me, kind of in a nice little automated way. So not that these are answered in real time. These were probably asked a while back. Don't forget, if you need somebody to coach you through my decluttering process, I now train and certified coaches at declutteringcoaches.com. So you can go there, and we have a listing. I think we have 25 certified coaches now. We have a lot more who are have started going through or are about to complete the training and decide if they want to also be certified. If you want to be a coach, go to declutteringcoaches.com and find out how to do that. So I am very excited to have that, because I know this is really hard. The reason I do these lives is that I understand it is not a quick answer that those of us who truly, honestly struggle with clutter need. It is actually not helpful to say, oh, well, you should get this stuff out of your house and then you'll like your house better. Because people like me are like, oh my word, I already know that. I need to know how to get it out of my house. I need to know how to break through the attachments that I have. I need to know how to break through the feeling of being overwhelmed, all of that. So that's what we talk about here. That's why we dive into questions so that you can start to grasp it. I was just talking, we have a monthly Zoom call with my Patreon people. I know I'm just talking about all the stuff right now. We have a monthly Zoom call, and several people talked about just how much they need to hear the same things again and again from all the different angles. And then at some point it clicks. Okay. It finally clicks. So that's what we're doing here. If you'd like to know more about being a patron, go to patreon.com/aslopcomesclean. All right. So I am going to answer some questions that were submitted in the past. I have, abbreviated versions here, but I will read the full question that was actually submitted. So, what do you do when a lot of the clutter is caused by those items not having a home, or the place where it would make sense is already full with things that have emotional meaning to another family member? 6 years ago, we moved to a house that belonged to my husband's parents. All their belongings remained in place, not leaving any available space for our things. We didn't intend to move there, but we couldn't find another place on time. Once we moved, I was too busy taking care of our child with special needs, and my husband was too busy working all day. So over the years, our items just piled and piled on every surface. I've been trying to declutter, but it feels that a lot of things that are taking the very limited cabinets and storage spaces are things that I just keep shuffling and tidying, only because they are not mine to decide, and my husband wants to keep a lot. I feel like we have so many things that we don't need or use, but I don't want to be insensitive telling my husband to throw or donate things that belong to his parents and grandparents. I am a very recent follower, but have been enjoying YouTube and purchased your book in audiobook form so I can listen while trying to catch up with dishes and daily tasks. Okay. All right. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that this is a lot, right? Like this is a really tough situation. I don't know the exact podcast numbers, but I have actually had at least one conversation with someone who's very much in the exact same situation that you're in, which means moving into a home that had belonged to family members, that was completely and totally furnished, and then bringing their stuff in. Okay. So, maybe somebody can find that one, or you can email and I'll have my assistant look it up. But it's tough. This is a tough situation. So I don't want to pretend like, oh, just do this. Like, it's a long process. Like, where you are right now and where you want to be, those are really far apart, and it's going to be a long process to get there. Okay. Here's the thing that I would remind you or tell you. Okay. If you're still new around here, like I said, these are not, questions from yesterday or anything, but the first thing that I would say is, because, and so the succinct version here, we'll answer that first, and then we'll kind of bring on, okay, but what about your unique situation in that you're in this house that was full of stuff from his parents? And it sounds like from the question that the parents don't live there anymore. So I don't know if they've passed on or if they're in assisted living or something like that at this point, which adds a whole nother layer of emotion to it, right? For your husband. So okay, so as far as just the question as the succinct version here is, what do you do when a lot of clutter is caused by items not having a home? First answer to that is we give items a home with my first decluttering question. And that question is, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Okay. We are not going to come up with the best spot, the most logical spot. If that works for you, that's exactly what you should be doing. But if you're here with me because you're like, I've tried so many times to get organized and it just never works, it might be because you're doing the thing of really coming up with a great spot from all this thinking, and then you never actually think of that spot again, and you've lost this item. You can never find it. Okay. So we give items a home according to where I would look for it first, meaning not thinking it's going to be there, not being confident that this is its home, because if it had a home, then it's already left during the easy stuff part of my decluttering process. Okay. When I talk about my decluttering process, I'm talking about my 5-step progress, only progress, no mess method. You can get a copy of just the 5 steps to carry around with you by signing up for my newsletter at aslobcomesclean.com/5. Okay. But the first step is trash. The second step is easy stuff that has an established home. But when we get to the point where things don't have a home, we ask, where would I look for this first? And that becomes its home. Okay. The place where literally I have no idea where this item is. I don't know where it is, but I need it and I go looking for it. And that's the drawer I look in first. That's its home. Okay. And as you do that, you have to have a way, right? Like you need a way to determine the home. You just said, things don't have a home. Okay, this is how we're going to give it a home. It's the method that we do that. And the beauty of it is that when you do look for it, even though you're like, oh no, I don't know where this is, the first place where you look most of the time is the place where it actually is if you put it in the place where you would look for it first. Okay. Every time that happens, you gain a little more confidence in yourself and in this method. And it becomes easier to go, where's the first place where I would look for this? Okay. Like it's icy right now. We just, we needed to use the hose. And so we had to take off the little styrofoam cover from our faucet thing and outside. And so it was going to freeze again. It's just not always cold in Texas, just have these weird, times where it is. We needed, and I was like, don't forget, honey, that we had to take that off when we, needed to use the hose the other day. And he was like, oh no, where is it? And I said, well, when you took it off, I offered to put it in the place where I would look for it first, but you said that you wanted to put it in the place where you would look for it first. I said, I don't remember what that place was, but go look in the place where, you ask yourself, where would I look for this first? Go look in that place. And it was in there. Like it was in the exact spot where he had put it. So like he didn't have confidence necessarily that he was going to find it. He thought, oh no, where in the world did I put that? And I just reminded him, remember, ask yourself where I would look for this first, which he was actually looking for it. But because that's the same question he had asked himself when deciding where it should go, he used the where would I look for it first. It was actually there. Okay. So all of that builds confidence and eventually over time gets things in your house to I'll have a home, right? Because everything I'm going through, I'm asking myself that question. The place where, but then the second part of this is the place where it would make sense is already full with things that have emotional meaning to another family member. So if we take out the things that have emotional meaning to another family member, we say the place where I would look for it first. We're not asking ourselves where would make sense. We take that out of the equation because that helps, that makes us overanalyze. But if the place where I would look for it first is already full, well, then I have to remove something in order to create the space for this item. Okay. That's how I keep my house that's how I make my house overall continually get better and better and better. Okay. As I'm giving something a real home and I'm creating space for it in that home by taking out ideally something that is trash or donations. Okay. That's ideally what I'm going to remove to create the space for that. But you added in the layer of emotional meaning for another family member, and you explained that it's a big deal. Like, this was a house that was completely full, did not have room for your stuff. And it's your husband's family and all these other layers, okay, that we have there. So in your situation, the thing I would remind you is that our goal is better, right? You said that your stuff has just piled and piled and piled up on top of these surfaces because of the unique and difficult and honestly traumatic, it sounds like, situation that you are in moving into this home, okay? Remember that less is our goal and better is our goal. Okay. Like, we are just going to focus on it being less. We're going to, those first 3 steps of the decluttering process are non-emotional, require no decisions to be made. Okay. And steps 1 and 3 are things leaving the house. Step 1 is trash. It is great to just start with trash. Like, just start with the trash. Just do that. Like, say, okay, there is so much to do, and yet I am overwhelmed. There's going to be so much to deal with down the line. And that's part of what's happening here for you, is that you know that there are really difficult decisions that are going to have to be made, conversations that are going to have to be had, major changes in thinking and all this kind of stuff that's going to have to happen. Don't think about that, all of that yet, because you're going to have to do the trash anyway. So just start with the trash that's yours and visible and is not something you have to think through. Is this trash? Just start with the trash and say, this surely can't make that big of a difference when there's so much to do. And yet it does. Okay. So just do that. Anything that's easy, meaning it does actually have a real place, go ahead and take that out of there. And then look for donations and just do that. Do that over and over and over. And this space is going to start to get better. Because here's the thing. If you will start this in the visible space, then your family, including your husband, is going to start to experience the house changing. And I can't guarantee it. And I can't even explain why exactly. But as people start to live in a house that, okay, there's actual space. This house is more under control. I can see it improving. It starts to change how we think about things. Okay. The problem for you that makes this so difficult is that legitimately the places where things would go are its own huge, daunting issue. So go ahead and make what progress you can make without worrying about any of that yet. Okay. Yes, you're going to get to it, but if you can make visible progress with just trash and easy stuff and donations, getting stuff out of the house, if you will just do that before you ever get to the actual putting, creating homes and all that kind of stuff with the decluttering questions, as you just do that part, your house will start to change and it will give you some experience. It will give you some perspective that might be difficult to have right now as you're looking at the overall daunting project. Okay. All that to say, it's going to be a long, long haul, but it has to start with the trash, right? Like, it has to, and do that in the visible areas, the stuff that's just yours or neutral, that before you ever get to those really hard decisions about dealing with his parents' stuff. But it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. It's hard. Okay. Here's a good question. Do you have questions you ask yourself before deciding if something should be trash or donated? Okay. Case in point, a shirt I don't like because the sleeves are too long. Should I donate it because someone else might have longer arms, or should I just trash it because it's out of proportion? Okay, so as far as the do I have questions I ask myself before deciding if something should be trashed or donated, I really don't. I just look for trash. And when I say trash, I mean like things I don't have to ask myself questions about, right? Okay, so I'm going to just get rid of that. I think what you're asking here is when I get to the donation stuff, how do I decide if maybe something is actually trash instead? As far as this specific question, a shirt you don't like because the sleeves are too long. Are the sleeves too long like that shirt that Denise made for Theo? Do you know what I'm talking about? You know, like the fashion shirt. I know we're not supposed to talk about the Cosby Show anymore, but y'all remember what I'm talking about, right? Like, so the like, are we talking like the sleeves are 6 feet long, or are we talking the sleeves are a little too long? You know, like, because in that case, if the shirt is perfectly fine, but I didn't like it because my arms didn't work for it, yes, I would absolutely donate that. If it's a complete factory reject that I purchased at a store that sells factory rejects back when I was obsessed with, you know, insane, crazy bargains for you know, pennies, and surely I can do something with that. And now I've come to the point where I've realized, yeah, I can't, then that might be trash, right? But as far as like analyzing, is this absolute perfection for every situation? No, I don't. I'm just going to go ahead and donate that. Okay. So I think it might feel like maybe you're over analyzing and maybe you need to just go with some instinct. I'm going to pull out the trash. Okay. I'm going to pull out the, you know, easy stuff that has established homes. I'm going to do that. You know, like, let yourself use the process and don't get stuck. And remember that if there is an item that overwhelms you because you're like back and forth, skip that item. Either decide it's head explosion, so I'm just going to throw it away because I got to get it out of my house, but I feel too guilty about donating it. Okay, then throw it away. That's great. Or it's head explosion and yet I can't bring myself to throw it away, but I also can't say, okay, skip it, move to the next thing. Because as you get this space decluttered and you experience, oh, wow, it's so much easier to maintain. It's easier to manage my entire life when I just have less stuff to deal with. Then it is going to, it's going to look different to you. And you're going to have the bandwidth to maybe look at it differently and think differently. I never did check to make sure that nobody has said they can't hear me. Oh, good. Somebody said head explosion rule. So you did hear me say that. All right. Next question. How do you tackle all those digital photos, sometimes thousands, stored on devices and computers? Okay. So I am just going to tell you that for myself, and this is what I recommend, and I hear works for so many people, specifically people will say, I followed your 5-step process on my digital clutter, on my photos. I just followed the process. Why? Because I need a process. Because I look at that and I just feel overwhelmed and stuck. So instead I say, I've got to work through this. So I'm going to start with the trash. I mean, like, that works, right? If you can say, I'm going to go through my photos and I am just going to get rid of trash. Well, especially digital, y'all, how many times do we take 15 pictures? Click, 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 which is not even that, the sound that it makes anymore, but you know what I mean? I take 15 to hopefully get one. Well, then I've got 15 of the same picture. Okay, just going through and saying, I'm just going to delete, delete, delete the trash. There's something about that says, I don't have to do this perfectly. I don't have to deal with every single picture as I see it and go, okay, is this one where, instead I'm just going to go through and say trash. Oh, wait, there are 15 of the same one. This is my favorite. Click, 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 click on the other 14 and get rid of those. You know, and just doing that is going to significantly reduce what you're dealing with. It also helps your brain start to realize what you actually have, right? What am I actually dealing with? And then go through and say, okay, easy stuff. Is there anything that has an established home? Do I already have some folders or whatever that I need to go ahead and put these things, obviously, okay, I've got a family vacation to New Zealand. I've never taken one of those, but I sure would love to. Family vacation to New Zealand. I've already got a folder for that. Oh, okay. I'm going to make sure those go in there. Those are easy. And just start to reduce the overall volume of stuff that you're dealing with. And then you get down to your really difficult decisions. But even before you ever get to the decisions, you have dealt with trash, which has significantly reduced the amount of stuff that you're going to deal with in a very non-emotional way. Okay. So yes, you're going to have to go, okay, how does this step apply to this situation? But I promise you're smart enough to do that, and you can figure out how to do that. Okay. All right. There's also, and I'm sure people can give examples in the comments of apps and things. There are apps out there. I haven't used any enough to really be able to say, oh yeah, this app, blah, 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 can do that. But I know I've heard of apps that make this process easier. So I hope some people will share some experiences that they have with that. Let's see. Go to the real question. We moved from a 4,100 square foot home to a 1,700. Okay, just to be clear, if you are living outside of the US and you're picturing square meters, just know that this is not at all square meters, okay? Because one time I had somebody leave a review of one of my books, I think, because I had talked about like 1,700 square feet was our first home that we had. And they were like, they could not believe that I was worried about clutter in a 1,700 square meter house. And I looked up how much that was, and it was like 41,000 square feet or something humongous. Like it was, I think the example that they gave was, what's that guy who, I don't know, my kids call him the GOAT, that quarterback that the Cowboys just beat. Anyway, whatever his name is. He's supposed to, Tom Brady. Yes, that's him. Anyway, and it gave like his mansion house as an example of something that big. And I was like, well, no wonder they thought it was interesting. So we're talking about square feet here, not square meters. I had started okay, this is back to the question, sorry. I had started the decluttering process before we moved, but not close to where we needed to be. Now everything is stacked in the garage and or basement with only a wide walking path. We are literally moving stuff to get things we need, and then of course not put back but stacked on top. Words of wisdom on how, where to start to be able to take it there now when there isn't a defined space yet. I feel like I have to take stuff out to rearrange. That stops any progress I may have even started. We do have small overhead storage, so when I find my Christmas stuff, I put it there. I just don't have an empty space to delegate different things we find. I am so thankful I found you and eager to be able to use my garage. Okay. So just had a phone call. I'm guessing my kids are out of school again tomorrow. We'll see. Okay. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah. Okay. So you have moved to a home with a lot less space. As far as like things don't have a defined space, you got to have a space for things. As things come out of the box, one item at a time, it needs to go to a real place in your house. I determine that place the same way I always do, which is where would I look for this first, which feels a little weird in a new house. I just moved, a little over a year ago. It is something that it feels a little ambiguous. And yet there is, like in this house, if I needed a stapler, where would I look first for a stapler? Like that right there is, that's how I use it. That's the process that I use to determine where something is going to go. It's always, where would I look for it first? Even in this home where there isn't a place where I've ever looked for it before, but it's where would I look for this first? That's its home. Okay. So go ahead and take it there now to this place. Even if it's not perfect, you're going to be so much better off if you give it a real home. And then this whole, I feel like I have to pull things out. I'm not sure if you mean from the box or if you mean from the home, but sometimes if you packed a bunch of stuff together from the living room, okay, well then take the box to the living room, but every item that comes out has to go into a real place. And then anything that didn't get a real place, it needs to be donated and gone. And it's just working little by little and saying, I am, even though it's overwhelming, because it feels so overwhelming, but you're in a better situation because you have all that stuff in the garage, as opposed to, spread out all over your house and then try to decide. It gives you the opportunity to say, okay, one item at a time, even if it means bringing a box in the house, but one item at a time, I'm going to give it a home, give it a home, give it a home. If there is not a real home in this house, it needs to go. And that's how you're going to take advantage of the moving process for decluttering to make your new house so much easier to manage than it used to be. Okay. All right. Next question. I think the Cowboys just beat them, didn't they? A couple weeks ago. I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure somebody will tell me. Okay. Do you have a certain thought process or questions when you're out shopping to avoid cluttering with impulse buys? Do you ask your 2 decluttering questions to be more objective on what you're buying? Okay. So the number one way to change how you shop to avoid bringing clutter into your house is to declutter. First of all, when you are obsessed with decluttering, it's amazing how you just don't go shopping as much. Like, I mean, even though I used to, and for me, shopping was garage sales, which meant I was getting stuff for pennies on the dollar and bringing it into my house at an insane, crazy, amazing, intense rate, right? Okay, so I would bring the stuff into my house, and that was what got me into my clutter situation. As I was decluttering, it was like that was my focus, and I just naturally stopped going as much. But even when I am out, after having decluttered, not that you have to be done, but just the process of decluttering meant that I found all these things and got rid of all these things that at one point I had shopped for. So I got rid of a ton of decorations. I got rid of a ton of my kids' toys. I got rid of so many things that were the same things I was seeing in a shop, right? Like, or in a garage sale. I was seeing more throw pillows and kids' toys and all that kind of stuff. And so because I had been decluttering stuff like that, that stuff started to look different to me. I saw it as something that was going to be future clutter, blah, blah, blah. So that's the number one thing, is to go ahead and declutter instead of trying to analyze that, just get stuff out of the house, so that you also start to identify, oh, that thing that I thought was really cool, and then I put it up on Facebook Marketplace and nobody wanted it. And I was like, wait, what? Other people aren't as excited about this, blah, blah, blah. It changed how I looked at things, because I used to buy things thinking, oh, I love that. And if I can't use it, well, then I'll just sell it because people will be so excited to get it, blah, blah, blah. All of that experience changed how things look. As far as asking my 2 decluttering questions, to be more objective about what I'm buying, not so much that, as far as, except for, where would I look for this first? Meaning, I need to know where this is going to go in my house when I bring it home. And it really comes down to the container concept, meaning everything has to have actual space to be in my home. And if there's not space for it, I've got to remove something else. So as I bring it, if I'm going to bring it into my home, I'm going to have to get rid of something else. So I have to be able to picture where it's going to go and what's going to need to leave in order for it to have space for that. But through the whole decluttering process, I started knowing what I had, knowing where it was, liking the way my house looked, which meant I was much less likely to think that this thing was going to make me love my house. It was like, I already like how my house looks. So if I'm going to bring that in, I'm going to have a space for it. I'm going to have to get rid of something, but I've already gotten rid of a bunch of stuff and I'm kind of down to what I really like. And so it just changed that process for me. So it's more about, where is this going to go in my house, according to where I would look for it first, and what am I going to have to get rid of in order to create space for that. So it's more the container concept that I use in that than asking the decluttering questions, if that makes sense. So, all right. That is questions from there. I'm going to take some questions from the comments. Don't forget, if you would like to be able to have these conversations with other people using the same language that we use for decluttering, I do have a Patreon group, and they are lovely, lovely people, and they're very supportive of one another. And so that's a place where you can go and have these discussions using these concepts, like where would I look for it first, being the right way for those of us who, this works for us, being the right way for us to, determine homes for things, or the container concept, all that stuff. So, all right, so let me go into the questions. Put some question marks at the front of your question if you would like for me to answer your question. I'm not for sure if we, we'll be able to get to all of them, but I'll try to get to some. Okay. Oh, I love that. I started throwing away more stuff. We pay a garbage bill. Use that as motivation. You're paying the garbage company to make your house more livable. I love it. That's great. Okay, see, there we go. The Cowboys beat the goat. Goat, for those of you who don't have teenagers, is greatest of all time. So when you hear a teenager call someone the goat, they're not being insulting. That's a huge compliment. It's the greatest of all time. So anyway, I know the first time I heard it, I was like, what? Anyway, and they explained it to me. It's a very common term used by younger people. Answering where I would look first was really hard when I moved until I got used to the flow of my new space. I think, yes, but I think some of that comes from going ahead and putting it in, like I moved some things. So I, like, specifically my kitchen, where I asked myself, where would I look for this first? I put it there. And then as time went on and I was in my kitchen and I kept looking in this cabinet right here, I don't know why I did that for such and such thing. Then it was like, okay, well, then I'm going to move it there because that's where I'm actually looking for it first. But it was better than for me to just be stuck and not put things away. Try not to think too hard about trash or donate and declutter. Otherwise, it will keep everything. Yeah, just those things are supposed to be pre-decision. Okay, those are before you're starting to make decisions in the process. And so just go ahead and keep getting stuff out that is, that's easy. So I know, right? Let's see. Don't know where to start. Start with the trash. Start with the trash. That's the first thing to do, because it will immediately make progress. Focus on better. Change your goals to, I'm going to make this space better, which means it's literally not possible to fail if you do one thing. If you throw away one piece of trash, that makes it better. Okay. So, and I know that's a very short version. I'm not acting like, oh, it's just throw away trash. No, I get it's much more than that, but that's where the books come in. Okay. As they go into all the different details, they're available at libraries as well. So, you can ask your local library. Let's see. Oh, I have one here. Better to declutter one room at a time or a little in each room. So I follow the visibility rule, which I made up and I named it a rule. But basically it means that's how I prioritize decluttering. I start in the most visible area first, and I work on that space. It's up to you if start with your visible surfaces and everything first. It's up to you whether or not you then go inside the cabinets and drawers in that room, or if you move to the next room, okay, and work in the visible clutter in the next most visible space in your home. But I use that partly just because I'm like, I need to have a definite way to prioritize my projects. And so that's how I prioritize it. The benefit of it is that you see your progress that you're making. It inspires you to then keep going. Like you increase your decluttering energy, as opposed to decluttering in a teeny tiny space over here that you never see, and then being like, oh, well, what's the point of all that? My house doesn't look any better, right? Okay. How to start to declutter clothes if you need to lose weight, but it is too slow, so you need several sizes. Unloved is already donated. This is a hard question, so remember the container concept takes the difficulty out of the questions, right? So we say, this is the space that I have in my clothes storage area, whether that's drawers or closet, whatever. This is the space that I have to devote to clothing. Top priority needs to be what I actually can wear right now, right? And So if I have the space to have what I need to wear right now for the actual size that I'm in, and I have a little bit more space, okay, then that's how I make those decisions. So I say, I'm going to take things out, giving top priority to the stuff that actually fits me right now, being easily accessed, get toable, usable. Okay, so it can't just be crammed in there. I'm going to do that, and then any other space determines how much I can keep for these other possibilities. Okay, so like, I'm going to keep a few things for the next size or whatever, so that when I realize, oh my goodness, these pants are falling off, in the US, pants are your trousers, just in case some of y'all are thinking something else and you don't live in the US. But that, in that moment, I'll have, a couple of pairs of pants, and then I can go, I don't know, to the thrift store where I donated my other stuff. Remember, this is something I love to tell, because it made me just go, that is so smart. And it's Tish Oxenreider. She doesn't really write about this stuff anymore, but I heard her one time say that she views thrift stores as a free storage unit. Okay. Meaning she will donate something to a thrift store, knowing that if she ends up, not as a free storage unit, sorry, she views thrift stores as storage units, so that if she ends up needing that item in the future, she can go into a thrift store and get a very similar item, because thrift stores always have lots of clothes, right? She can get a very similar item for super dirt cheap, right? For very, very, very cheap. So it's like, I'm going to go ahead and donate these things, knowing that if I need them in the future, I can go get a pair of trousers or pants for $3. Salvation Army has half price Wednesdays. I shouldn't tell you all that, should I? At least the ones in the Dallas area do. Wednesdays clothes are half price. But yours probably has something like that you can go and do that. Let's see. Any advice about the gifts you buy ahead of time? I have a ton of Christmas stacked in the corner. Okay, if something deserves space in your home, which if you are someone who buys gifts ahead of time, that's great. And that's, that deserves space in your home. If it's not taking up the space that you need to live your everyday life, right? So give it a real spot. A real spot is not stacked in the corner, right? It needs an actual shelf in your closet, whatever. And that will help you determine, oh, I can't buy Christmas gifts ahead of time because I literally don't have a shelf available in my home for that. Or it might make you realize, oh, that shelf up there has all this stuff that I stored at one time, and now I realize I don't need or care about any of that. That can all go, because the Christmas gifts that I buy ahead of time deserve a space in my home. But that space that doesn't take up room that you need for your actual everyday life, that space is the limit. So that determines how many Christmas gifts you can buy ahead of time. Once it's full, then, oh, okay, well, I actually should donate that item because I ended up finding this item that I like better. And this space is the space that it is. And I can't keep more than will fit in that space and my house ever even possibly be able to stand or control. Okay, because I have to just like blame the space for that. Let's see. My partner has ADHD, so he's always leaving a debris trail. So I put it where I would look for it first because he always asks me, but then he is annoyed too when it's not where he dropped it. There's always the, things that you deal with. I would make sure that you are dealing with your own stuff first, which there's nothing in here that says that you haven't already done that, but maybe even asking him, hey, where would you look for this first? And, oh, well, if this space was cleared up, but see if there's a way, and I know it's interesting dynamic, but if there's a way, hey, let's do a 5-minute pickup together. No, I really do just mean 5 minutes. You can maybe even make it a 2-minute pickup together. Let's do this 2-minute pickup together, this 5-minute pickup together, so that you can start, kind of doing that together as far as, okay, well, where would you look for it first? Well, if this space was where we could actually have people over or whatever. Where would you look for it first? And then figuring out for your partner what the places where he would look for it first. Okay. And just remembering that, and you didn't say this, but like debris trails are things that people like me leave. The 5-minute pickup is the way that we keep that from being something that just builds and builds into total mess. Your question, where would I look for this, has helped my husband start recognizing that what he was holding is trash. Praise God and pray for your progress and your help. I love it. Yeah, I've actually heard this from a lot of people. If someone has a hard time identifying trash, even though you know for a fact that the thing they're holding in their hand is trash, but saying, okay, let's get rid of trash, they don't see it as trash. Asking the question, where would I look for this first, is actually very helpful for those who can't identify trash. So even just going on to that question, oh, okay, where would you look for this first? Oh, that's trash. Like it's amazing how that question will kind of trigger for some people that. When it comes to common areas with roommates, how should organizing those areas be handled when it seems like they don't want to put in the effort but are okay with you doing it? Declutter, right? So organizing versus decluttering. If organizing isn't working, declutter. Less stuff, less stuff, less stuff, less stuff. Like that's because something that doesn't exist in the home can't get out of control. So, and we declutter down to the clutter threshold of the lowest clutter threshold person. Okay. Clutter threshold, not meaning what I can stand to be out and cluttery, meaning what can I handle? How much stuff can I handle without it getting out of control easily? Like what can I easily keep under control? So just declutter more, declutter more, declutter more. Which I know is its own dynamic there because, it's roommate stuff or whatever, but it's, yeah, I mean, but it's tough. I mean, roommate situations are difficult. Let's see what next. There's another. How do you get over the emotional block when the space you are supposed to declutter is full of things that you need to decide if you want to keep or not? So I do not ask myself if I want something because that's an emotional block for me. I will always say I want it. I mean, maybe I've changed a little bit more now, but like, especially there the answer is always yes. Like, why would I have it in my house if I didn't want it? Right. So instead, I take any of those, like, should I keep this? All that. I don't ask any of those kind of questions. Instead, I ask, where would I look for this first? So even if it's something that in my mind, I'm like, should I really keep that or not? I take that out and I say, well, where would I look for this first? And if I have a place that pops in my mind of where I would look for it first, I go ahead and I take it to that space. And then when I get there and there's no room for it, I say, okay, what am I willing to get rid of in order to make the space for this? That generally will trigger to me, is it something worth keeping or not? But I'm never asking myself the question, is this worth keeping? Instead, I'm saying, okay, if I would look for this first here, what am I willing to get rid of in order to make the space for this? And then I realize, well, I'm not willing to get rid of something in order to make space for this. Okay, well, then it needs to be donated because it's not that important to me. But I've revealed that through these non-emotional, fact-based, space-based questions, as opposed to just sitting there and staring at it and saying, where would I look for this first? If I don't have instead of staring at it and saying, should I keep this or do I want this or whatever? I just don't ask those questions. If I ask myself the question, where would I look for this first? And I don't have an answer, that's when I ask myself the second decluttering question. If I needed this item, would it ever even occur to me that I already had it? Okay, which generally it wouldn't, because I didn't have a place where I would go looking for it. And then I'd let it go. Okay, because I realized, wait a minute, I didn't even know that I had that. I wouldn't even go looking for this. Now, before, it's not that I maybe didn't forget about it, but if I had a place where I would go looking if I needed this item, then yes, I'm going to go take it to that spot. Okay, but this is how I work through all of this without using emotions. And then it comes down to the container concept. Let's say I have, let's say I'm looking at a stack of books and I think, oh my goodness, I've got to go look through every single book and analyze, do I want to keep this? Do I not want to keep this? Oh, but so-and-so gave this to me, but I kind of hated it and blah, blah, blah. We take that out and we just say, okay, well, this bookshelf is where I would look for books. So I'm going to put my favorite books in there first. And then by the time it's full, I've already identified which ones I like the most, because those are the ones that my favorite ones went on there first, and the ones that I don't like as much. Okay, well, those are going to go because they might be great, but I don't have the space. So I'm taking that pressure off of me of making value decisions, and instead I'm blaming the space that I have. Because the fact is, if I try to keep more stuff in my house than actually fits, there literally is no hope of my house ever being under control. Like, it's just not possible if I try to put more stuff in there that can actually fit. Let's see. Yay, I love hearing this. That makes me so happy. Ah, got another one. Yay. Specific tips on decluttering with little kids. Yes. This is where sometimes people are like, you just always say the same thing. I do, because it doesn't change. And here's the beauty of it. One of our decluttering coaches has been using my method with decluttering clients for a long time. Declutteringcoaches.com is where you can find the people trained in my method. But she had already been using this, so she was excited to officially get certified in it. And she specifically works with moms of young children. And she's like, I teach them, I coach them on the 5-step process, because the beauty of my 5-step process, which you can get a printable of it at aslobcomesclean.com/5. The beauty of the process is that you only make progress, which means if you will follow the process, you can literally get distracted, step away at any time, and your space is only better than it was before, because you never put yourself in a situation where, when life happens, which life happens a lot, completely unexpectedly, all the time when you have toddlers, right? Like, it's constantly a distraction. But you can step away at any time and your space is only better than it was before. And that is why the 5-step process works so incredibly well with children. I was going to put that question back up, but now, anyway, here we go. So it works incredibly well with children, because you are never going to put yourself in a situation where you're worse off than you were before and you can't stop, because you are only going to make progress and only progress. It does not matter how much time you have to devote to decluttering. You can declutter in any amount of time that you have, as few as 15 seconds to throw something away, right? And then you get distracted. Okay, I've made progress. I threw something away. No, I didn't do near as much as I wish I could have, but I did something. And that mentality change is the thing that changed my house. That mindset shift is the thing that changed my house and has changed so many other people's houses. But it works so well with when you have little kids, because you are just acknowledging that distractions are going to happen. And so I'm going to do things in a way where I will still make progress even when distractions happen. So if the kids are quiet, which, with toddlers, you have to be a little nervous when it's quiet, right? But if the kids are taking a nap, I can start decluttering on a space. And because I'm only going to make progress, if they wake up after 3 minutes, great. But if they sleep for an hour and a half, I will have made huge progress. Okay. So, or if I work for 15 minutes and then I go, I want a nap today too. Okay. Take your nap. You have not put yourself into a situation where you're worse off than you were before. Okay. Y'all are talking about dogs. And I want to talk about dogs because I love my dogs are not here today at my office because there are other family members home on our ice day. So they got to stay home. They're always so excited to come with me across the field to my office. They love that part. And then they get here and they're like, all she does is talk into the computer or type in a computer. anyway, but they're still always so excited to walk across the field to go to work. So when I get my stuff out to go to work, they start going berserk. How did you finally decide to buy a bookshelf? I'm guessing you're a patron because I talked about my bookshelf that I bought today. Okay, so I purchased a bookshelf today that has been in my cart for, I think, since Thanksgiving of 2021, because we moved into my house November of 2021. And I remember after Thanksgiving being like, I want a bookshelf for that spot. And it was expensive and I didn't buy it. But then I had done something where I'd gotten a nice little check and I was like, I'm going to spend that on this bookshelf. So finally decide to buy the bookshelf. It was partly because I was not trying to fill my house up. You know what I mean? Like, I lived with it for a while. There is so much value in decluttering, getting stuff out, and then living with the space being decluttered, that then eventually you go, you know what would be actually helpful in here, as opposed to, I'm going to buy this thing to solve all my problems. That never worked, right? Like, I used to be a shelf obsessed person. I always thought if I could just get the next shelf or the perfect shelf for this space, all my clutter problems would be solved. That never worked, right? Like, it never worked. My husband would be like, oh my word, when I would come home and say, hey, can you come with me and pick up this shelf that I bought at a garage sale? I've already paid for it. Come on. He was like, no, not more shelves. I've gotten rid of so many shelves over the years, but I lived with it, this space having absolutely nothing in it for a long time. And then I finally realized, okay, I really do need a shelf for these books and these items in this specific spot. But it came from just waiting and just living with it for a while and just saying, I would rather have nothing than get the wrong thing. And then eventually I felt confident. Now, who knows? I might have bought it and I might be donating it in a month if it doesn't work. But anyway, there's so much about, y'all are all talking about puppies and I want to talk about puppies too, but oh well. I am not answering this question because I'm sorry. The answer is never. Goodness gracious. Anybody who has teenagers knows. I mean, my teenagers are amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything. I love them. I'm not disparaging them in any way. But so y'all know I'm a Christian, right? So I listened to this podcast and somebody was talking about, and it's funny, but it's also like so true, right? So somebody was, I think it was a Jamie Ivey podcast, and she was talking to someone, and she just casually mentioned this book that she's been reading, and how it was, a lot of the premise was, you get to this age in your life where maybe you're like in your 40s and your 50s and your career is like kind of like established and stuff, and how you could, not for everybody obviously, but for a lot of people at that stage where you could get to this point where you're like, okay, I have my life under control. I can just coast now. And then God gives you teenagers specifically to remind you you don't have any control. Anyway, and I thought, wow, that's truth right there, and how interesting that timing. I think that's very fascinating. Okay. Again, I know y'all are having great conversations in the comments, and that makes me so happy. I use the container concept with my boyfriend's kids because their toys were overflowing their bins, and it worked amazingly. They're 4 and 5. I love hearing that. The container concept works so well with me and with children. I mean, and it's because it takes the power struggle out. There is no power struggle when the container is the bad guy. I am honoring the fact that you love your stuff. Here is a cool space to put it in. Put your favorite things in first. And then when it's full, then it's, you'll have to decide that, or not really even decide, but when it's full, you'll just have to accept that it's full and the things that didn't fit in there need to go. Okay. And then the other thing along with that is, when they have a favorite thing, you always get to say yes. You don't get to say no. Remember, you already filled up your thing. You don't have to say that. You just say, sure, of course you, oh, that is really cool. Of course you can keep that. All right, what are you willing to get rid of that's in the container now in order to make space for it? Oh, you're not willing to get rid of anything. Oh, man, I know, it's hard. But you don't ever have to say, well, you got to get rid of it. You're never saying, no, you never play with that, whatever. It's whatever they want to put in the container first, that, and then you let the container be the limit and the bad guy. It's amazing how well it works. Head explosion rule. Could you please explain what you meant? Basically, it's just a way for me to tell myself, if I am finding myself spinning out, going back and forth on an item, I'm like, okay, I mean, although I'm keeping this because I do love it. I love this mug, but everything I drink out of it tastes weird. So there's some, I'm not saying that about this. Okay. I'm just saying, like, hypothetical. I love this mug. I love a mug. It's so cute. And someone so gave it to me, but I can't stand to drink out of it. And actually it has that crack in it, and that crack, I read that thing about how that can, hold bacteria. And so I never actually drink out of it, but then I feel guilty, but I love it, but I feel guilty about it. I give myself permission in those situations to say, no physical item is worth my head exploding. I'm going to get rid of it. And it's like that, just, if I'm going back and forth, I say, not worth it. It's not worth it. I am not willing to have my head explode over a mug. And so I'm going to get rid of it. So it's just a way to release things and let things go, because I give myself permission of that. I know I'm really bad at stuff shifting. Any ideas on breaking the thought pattern? Yes. Use the process. Use the 5-step process, and know that if you are truly following the 5-step process, you will be actually dealing with each item as you go, because you're not putting yourself, you're not saying, I have to finish decluttering this space in the next 30 minutes. You're like, I'm going to make this space better. And it is better for me to deal with one item at a time, making final decision by final decision. Even if it goes more slowly than I wish it would, it is better for me to do one item at a time, final decision by final decision, using the 5-step process that is in the books, but is also, at the aslobcomesclean.com/5. I am going to use that process to make final decisions, and eventually it's going to change my house. I will change my house by making real decisions and acting on those real decisions and putting things in their final home, or giving them away, getting them out of my house if they don't have a place to be. My house will actually change if I do that slowly, as opposed to just moving things around. My house is never actually going to change. Okay. It is the 1 hour mark, just about. So, yeah, don't forget, if you, libraries have my audiobook. Some of them have the CDs. Some of them, Hoopla, Overdrive, Libby, all those different library apps where you can check out books, digital books. Most of them have my audiobook. If they don't, just because it's on Hoopla one place doesn't mean that your library has necessarily purchased it for their Hoopla system. But request that they get it. I mean, librarians tell me all the time they love it when people request a book. So request the book, and sometimes that will mean that it is you're first in line, possibly, unless other people have requested it too. But really, truly, and they're available. I'm not saying they're only at libraries. Like, they're literally everywhere you can buy an audiobook, you can get my audiobooks. Dana K. White. Just search, got to put the K in there or you won't find it. But they're everywhere. So there you go. Yeah. Hoopla is a library app. So is Overdrive. Yeah. I was featured on Overdrive this week. So, all right. Okay. I am going to see, I have to keep saying, totally worth buying the audiobooks, a type of book you can listen to again and again while decluttering. Somebody was just telling me this morning that she has literally listened to the audiobooks many, many times. I'm not going to quote how many because I can't remember, but it was like a lot. So, you know, a lot of people will just listen to it every time they declutter, and then they kind of grasp the concepts a little bit more. Okay, so I'm answering more questions. How many deep dive audios did I do? I have done 6. The last 2, I'm still getting my edits done because they're on my to-do list, and I have a lot of other things on my to-do list, so I haven't done that yet. But yeah, so there are 6. Those are paid audio products, but they are actually listed in most libraries that are more like 45 minutes to an hour, where I dive into subjects. So, okay. All right. I will talk to y'all next week. Make sure you go to declutteringcoaches.com if you want to hire a coach or be a coach, and go to askdanikWhite.com to ask questions for future lives. All right. I will talk to y'all next week.